So what are the sorts of things you can use then as proof? So obviously facts. We've talked a little bit though about be careful and ethical with those facts. Make sure that they are current, make sure that they are accurate and not misleading in any way. Expert opinions or quotations, those are particularly important for you as teenagers since you don't have a lot of the experience. It's not like you are a medical doctor who's done the research themselves. You need to rely on those experts to support your opinions. Again, that shows your credibility because you've done the research and you're choosing these people wisely. If anything needs to be defined, statistics are like facts. Examples can blur a little bit into that emotional appeal. Again, with anecdotes, those are the making it real, telling a story of a person who's experienced something, spinning out a tale of what would happen if we don't change our behaviors. And then the other thing that is kind of hard sometimes, but is super important, is acknowledging your opposition. Because if you start with a topic and half your room disagrees with you, they're going to put up a wall and be thinking of all of the reasons that you are wrong and that they disagree with you, and they're never going to hear you. And so one of the things we're going to work really hard to do is to engage the opposition, to acknowledge that they have valid points, that they have logical concerns, that they have, valid reasons why they believe what they do. However, you're going to ask them to consider some different points of view. And so that's really where a tactful and honest character and reaching out to those opposition makes a big difference in your persuasion. So when we do this construction, when you think about making your outline and building your argument, you need to first convince us there is a problem. So make sure the audience knows the issue exists, how big is the issue, how concerning is it, how relevant is it to us, and that it's something that we have to give time and energy to. So that's going to be the first thing that one of the first things you're going to do is convince us there's actually a problem. How big is the problem? How concerning is it? Then you have to go deeper in helping us understand. So this is supporting it. This is using testimony, using stories, using data to flesh out. This is a little informative in nature if you want to frame it that way. You've established a problem. Now you're informing us and continuing to persuade us and provide evidence about how big the problem is. And then you're going to offer some sort of solution or call to action that would resolve or address. Okay, and this is at the conclusion towards the end. This is where you're really going to engage people. So again, if you want to convince me that we need to reduce plastic use, that's great, and how harmful plastic is to our environment, awesome. But if you don't give me any actionable step that I, as a small consumer, an individual person can do, then I can nod and agree with you, but I really can't help you affect change. And persuasion should affect change. It should cause a change in behavior. It should cause a change in thinking, beliefs. You need to create a change of some sort. And then enactment is that realistic, actionable step that you could ask us to take, or multiple steps you could ask us to take. Write letters, sign petitions, don't buy this product, buy this product, recycle, look for numbers, be informed, volunteer, whatever is a reasonable step. And it might be a very small step to take. If we're talking about texting and driving, maybe it's purchase and use the sleeves that block your incoming calls. Maybe it's using an app that locks down your phone. Maybe it's signing a pact with your parents or a pact with your friends. There are lots of small things that are still actionable steps towards change. It doesn't have to be a 180 dramatic action plan. If you're tackling something super controversial, you're not going to change everyone overnight. Just do something small, even if you were speaking to a hostile audience, a group that you know really doesn't believe you, asking really them to just consider your opposition. Acknowledge the arguments on the other side. Always show respect for the opposition. People don't believe what they believe for no reason. There's always some reason. Some reasons are better than others. There's always some reason why people believe what they believe. And we have to respect that. And then we can work to change from there. We can even just work to agree to disagree, but understand each other better. And by understanding why people believe differently, we can respect, be like, you know what, I don't agree with your reasons and your logic, but I respect your thinking, and that can help reduce antagonism and conflict between people. There's lots of places where we disagree on how things should be done or what's good or bad, better or worse. But if we understand what the opposition is thinking and that they're not loose cannons, that they're not uneducated, that they're not out to hurt people, it does make it easier to accept their difference. And by accepting difference, we can maybe work to compromise, or we can get along better at minimum in our differences. So organization is really important, and this is kind of the key slide here. Really thinking about how you're going to organize your speech. So option A, intro and thesis, capture our interest, establish the problem, give us that strong preview. Then you're going to acknowledge the opposition. So you really want to think about what are the 3 top arguments, reasons the opposition believes what they do. So acknowledge them. I know many of you believe this, or there are valid concerns or valid reasons. And then you move into your body points. What you believe are the 3 strongest reasons why people should change their minds. And then you present them. They may or may not be related. Okay, they don't have to be. They might be. You might choose to directly argue your 3 opposition pieces. You might choose to do 2 and then do a different one. So, but it should be clear. And transitions and signaling to us where you are is very, very important at that point. And then you wrap up and do your conclusion. Call to action, review your main points, again, address respect for the opposition, but ask them to change their views or consider your arguments. Option B is what's called a point-counterpoint structure. This one works really well if your 3 arguments are the exact same 3 arguments of your opposition. So you kind of throw up, opposition believes this, however, they are wrong because of this. Opposition believes this, however, they should consider this because it's a better reason. Opposition believes this, and obviously it wouldn't have to be quite that structured, but you're going to point by point argue against your opposition's 3 main arguments, and then conclude and call to action. Again, clarity of, I'm addressing the opposition, but here's my point. You really have to signal clearly if you use point counterpoint, because otherwise we're going to get confused as to what you're arguing. Are the opposition your points, or it's going to sound like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth. So you really have to be careful about your organization and your structure, your signaling words, if you do point counterpoint. Either are effective. Different arguments lend themselves to different structures of organization. So it's not that one structure is better or worse. It's what does your topic lend itself best to. Here's an example of acknowledging the opposition. I know many of you may not like to hear what I'm saying, but think about it. If capital punishment does not deter violent crime, if indeed it may encourage more violent crime, isn't it time we put capital punishment itself on trial? So they're saying, we understand that you have emotional reasons for believing in capital punishment, but I'm going to present some ideas that are contrary to that. They acknowledge, I know that the desire for revenge can be strong. That's one of the motivating factors of people who believe in capital punishment, is the eye for the eye idea. If someone I love had been murdered, I would want the killer's life in return. So they're acknowledging that emotional aspect of a capital punishment. But that doesn't mean you should give it to me. That doesn't mean society should base its policy on my anger and hatred. And so they're acknowledging that pain of victims, but then asking us to step away from that for a more logical appeal, and it's very respectful. A couple of things that you want to avoid. Faulty logic or incomplete logic, and this is where persuasion gets dangerous, purposefully and inadvertently. So circular reason, that's kind of where you basically run in a circle and you don't really prove anything. Okay? Only an untrustworthy person would run for office. The fact that politicians are untrustworthy is proof of this. So you've just made this general statement and you've gone in circle and you haven't provided any real proof. A false analogy is making a comparison between things or ideas that isn't accurate and doesn't really extend. You're making too broad of a generalization. Okay. Stacking the evidence or card stacking, that is when you are kind of cherry picking studies and maybe ignoring other studies. You find that study that's, 4 people in 10 were cured, and you say this cure is 40% effective. Well, there was only 10 people in the study. And so that's not a very realistic way to present your statistics. This is also where you aren't fairly acknowledging your opposition. Loaded language is a really easy thing to fall into. These are those words that have those really strong connotations, emotional bias that we have to be careful about. Using words like, terrorist conjures up emotional responses that color our argument and make us appear more emotional than we maybe should be. Transfer is kind of like a false analogy. You're transferring qualities or attributes through kind of sketchy ways, and it's an inaccurate comparison. Unreliable testimony is exactly that. The star who says that this weight loss program is the best thing ever is not a good source of information because they're not a dietitian, they're not a doctor. They have no authority or credibility to be saying this is the best weight loss program. They're getting paid to do that. Bandwagon, this is a favorite of teenagers. Everybody's doing it. Everyone can go. If you don't do this, it's the peer pressure claim. Using vague or undefined terms, kind of those broad sweeping statements to change people's attitudes, are not ethical. And equivocation is purposely intending to deceive, saying something kind of vague and could be interpreted in a couple of ways with the purposeful intent to deceive your audience. And that one is super harmful, and it's something that we unfortunately see in our society a lot. So that wraps up our big picture about persuasion. We will talk a little bit more in class, but I want you to be thinking about your topics and how you can start framing those arguments.